welcome to our series, Before You Tie Them Up. In this video series, we'll be looking at fictional characters and stories to help us illustrate some concepts and the ingredients of healthy marriages and healthy relationships. Today, we're going to learn from Yasmin and Anas and their story. So Yasmin and Anas were introduced to each other at an iftar party in Ramadan, and they decided to get married within a couple of months. It wasn't long before they were fighting all the time. Anas could not accept the fact that Yasmin saw nothing wrong with drinking alcohol at weddings or other social events. He also realized soon after marriage that her idea of being religious meant fasting in Ramadan and avoiding pork. Although he did not consider himself a strict Muslim, he had looked forward to having a wife who would pray daily with him, especially Fajr and Isha. So if we think about their story and think about what's important in picking a spouse, we can see that they really should have spent a little bit more time talking about what's important to them in how they practice their religion, and even defining what does it mean to be religious. So, they met in one setting and they just made some assumptions probably that the way I practice Islam is the way you practice Islam. And they didn't really imagine once they're married, what would they like to do together? Are they going to want to pray together? Are they going to continue to party? Does everybody pray separately? Do they go pray in the masjid 5 times? And so these are the kinds of things that we really encourage people to think about before they even get married. So first you have to know yourself and really figure out, how do you manifest that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And then imagine when you have your spouse, how do you picture your two lives coming together? And in many families, people just practice their religion independently, right? Everybody just prays on their own. And other families, people all pray together. The children come and pray Jama'ah with you. In other families, the man goes to the masjid for every prayer and the wife is at home. Maybe she prays, maybe she doesn't. And there's maybe no communication around that. So whether it's prayer, whether it's fasting, whether it's fulfilling any of our religious obligations, even like reading Quran. Are you the kind of person that likes to read Quran and then talk about what you've read? And are you imagining you're going to do that with your spouse? Or is that something that's just really private between you and Allah and you're not going to include your spouse in that? So these are things that we may not think about before marriage. We don't probably know ourselves quite that way. And so we put a lot of questions in the book to help people become more familiar with themselves first, and then to start envisioning, okay, when I have another person in my life, how am I going to want that person to relate with me? I've had, some people say that, they just really are looking forward to waking up in the morning after marriage with their new spouse and getting up and praying Fajr together, and imagining that that's going to actually be an incentive to get out of bed and pray because somebody's going to pray with you. Other people, they just don't see any relationship between their spouse and the way that they practice their deen. And everybody's really different. The important thing is just to think about it ahead of time and have lots of conversations ahead of time so that you're not disappointed after marriage. And most of those disappointments happen when we have expectations, we haven't talked about them, and we just sort of assume that the other person thinks the way we do, and then it's time to pray and you find out your spouse has already prayed without you, and then you're disappointed, but you never had a conversation about it. So it's never too late if you're already married. Of course, you can have those conversations and you can negotiate your expectations. And once people feel like they're more on the same page, then they're less likely to have these kind of conflicts.
This Deen TV video was brought to you in part by Penny Appeal USA, Small Change, Big Difference, by Islamic Relief, Working Together for a Better World, and by Guidance Residential, the #1 Islamic home financer in the U.S.